I'm going to call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, February 23rd. Teresa, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. And would you do roll call, please?
Certainly. Miss Lippert?
Here.
Miss Foss?
Here.
Mr. McAllister?
Here.
Miss Remke?
Here.
Mr. Molesky?
Here.
Mr. Karstens?
Here.
Mr. Gentleman?
Here. Thank you very much. And hold on one second. Sorry, everybody. I'm a little disorganized here. Staff have any changes to the agenda? Chris?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, staff has no changes to the agenda at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion from Ms. Remke. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
We have a second. I believe that was Annette. Board members, if you have any changes to the agenda, please state them when called upon by Teresa. Otherwise, please vote yes or no to approve the agenda. Teresa, will you do roll, please?
Certainly. Miss Lippert?
Yes.
Miss Foss?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Miss Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karstens?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
So the agenda is approved. Moving on to approval of the minutes, meeting minutes of February 9th, 2021. I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 29th, 2021. Kathy, you're talking, but you're muted.
You can read my lips, right?
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 9th, 2021.
We have a motion from Ms. Foss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. McAllister. Board members, if you have any changes to the minutes, please state them when called on by Teresa. Otherwise, please vote yes or no to approve the minutes. Teresa, please do roll.
Miss Lippert?
Yes.
Miss Foss?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Miss Remke?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman?
Yes. So the meeting minutes have been approved. Next on to citizen comments. Teresa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public comments concerning agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the Open Town Hall portal. There were no comments of record on the portal. In addition to comments on the portal, citizens could call into the meeting to give comments. However, we don't have any callers on the line.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we will move on to new business. We have new development conceptual for the quarter deck, DRB 000212-2021. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your screen, do you all see the Harbor Town and the harbor?
Yes.
The site is outlined in red, as is usual. The lighthouse is where my cursor is right now. Of interest is Schooner Court, which was recently reviewed, and it sits right in here, that portion of Schooner Court. If anybody does not know where we are, please let me know. Seeing none, the tradition of waterfront architecture within the Sea Pines Resort is most recently best represented by the Beach Club. It aptly addresses its coastal setting with details like columned porches, tabby finished stucco, shingle and clapboard siding, and eaves with exposed rafter tails. The design of the new quarterdeck carries this tradition forward, building on Sea Pine's original relaxed classic architecture comprised of cedar shake roofs and indigenous tawny brick. The new design of quarterdeck takes its cues from Harbor Town Links Clubhouse, especially at its south facade, where it provides a bookend for a round of golf with similar but complementary design elements to where you began golfing. The site survey of the site is here. Again, you can see the lighthouse here and the quarterdeck, the existing quarterdeck building that will be demoed and rebuilt. Again, the existing site plan, lighthouse, existing building, parking lot. So this is the site plan for the new building overlaying the existing. Again, you can see the lighthouse here just for a point of reference, and the proposed Harbor Master building is right here. So at a slightly different angle, again, the building, lighthouse, and the Harbor Master building with the harbor below you. Sections through the site. Again, you can see, I'd call your attention to the lighthouse as a reference point. Paving details, other building details. This is a landscape, a planting schedule. Again, it's a little open-ended, so this is a conceptual review because this is a new building. So we'll be looking at this one more time, and at the final, we'd expect to see a more detailed landscape plan. A plan of the building, a roof plan of the building, elevations and illustrations, sections through the building, just a detail of the building.
Sorry.
You can see how the porches relate to the dock and the promenade. Again, more wall sections. And this is pretty close to a color board, but I would remind everybody this is a conceptual review, but you can see the colors down here at the bottom and the textures that are being proposed. Details of the rafters, railings. This is the Harbor Master building. It is out from and a completely separate building from quarterdeck. You can see a roof plan there. Elevations of that building. Okay, so now we're going into the proposed lighting plan for the quarterdeck. This is pretty much interior. Sorry, site lighting. Lighting in the trees, and parking lot lights. Okay, staff recommends conceptual approval as submitted.
Thank you, Chris. Is the applicant present? If so, please identify yourself.
Hi, this is Isabella Kleitz. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I'm with David Rao on this call, and we are part of the firm Hart Howerton, which is doing the architecture, landscape, and interior design for the project. And Cliff McMacken is also representing Quarterdeck from the development side on this project. So thank you guys for having us.
Great, thanks. Welcome. Is there anything you would like to add? You have 10 minutes if you'd like to use that up to further embellish Chris's presentation.
Are we able, I'm really curious to hear feedback here, and we're happy to respond to any specific items. Maybe we could use that 10 minutes in response to things people are particularly interested in learning about.
Great. All right. First question, has this been reviewed by the Sea Pines ARB?
It has, and we've gotten preliminary approval from them, and we need to go back with our sort of similar to this process with final tabby sample, color samples, and get their final approval on basically finished items like that. But they've seen everything and have had us move forward to in the approvals process.
Okay, great. Chris, did you all get a copy of that letter from or the approval?
No, sir. We would expect that at the final to confirm
Okay.
that they had approval from ARB at final.
Okay, so that's just a final, not a prelim. Okay, all right, great.
Okay, we'll make sure you have that.
Okay, I just want to make sure if they had any kind of big comments. Sounds like theirs was just kind of a looks great, more development kind of comment that everybody was just aware of what they were thinking. Okay, so we'll go through the board members, and they may have questions for you, and you are, if someone asks you a direct question, please just jump right in. You don't have to wait to be recognized. So,
Okay.
We'll start
Michael,
with this.
may I jump in just for a context question that's going to help me be able
Sure.
to understand the project a little bit better? I mean, it is a super unique site, so I just couldn't tell as far as going into it. I thought of it as a restaurant, new restaurant building, but seeing the Harbor Master building and changes to a fair amount of the landscape around it, and just trying to, if I could get a better sense of, where the limits, how the limits were set, how the Harbor Master relates to the restaurant. I just couldn't really grasp that.
This is David Rao with Hart Howerton. I work with Isabella, and I could answer that. The existing quarterdeck restaurant includes several functions within it, aside from the restaurant function. One of those is the Harbor Master, which is currently inside the existing building. The proposal is to demolish the existing building and maintain the quarterdeck program, and as well as the Harbor Master program, but to pull the Harbor Master program out so they have a sort of better position greater visibility to the harbor functions and operations, and independence from the building, so that the two operations can operate independently.
Does the site have any setbacks or anything? I couldn't tell.
So the building is a replacement of an existing building, effectively in kind, so that there are some existing nonconformances to the existing building, which are being bettered by the design of the new building. So the setbacks in general are being minimized. Impervious surface is being reduced. So it perpetuates a degree of nonconformance, but it eliminates a substantial amount of the nonconformance of the existing building.
Answer your question, Annette?
It gives me a little bit more sense.
Okay. Well, if you have more questions, if you have more specific questions when we get to Annette's turn, you can present them. I'm going to let Mr. McAllister start us off here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think this is a very thorough conceptual submittal, so thank you to the design team for that. In general, my first take is I think it's headed in the right direction. I think the building is very attractive, and it's a very exciting project. I had a couple of comments, mostly all related to the site, and some of them are admittedly pretty detailed, but I think that's just because you guys gave us so much information to look at. One of the comments I had on the site, on the north side of the building, I believe you guys are proposing a wood boardwalk right through there, and I think I couldn't tell if it's on grade or if it's raised at all, but it looks like we have like boardwalk that goes all the way up to the building. I think it'd be great if you could look for opportunities to put little plant beds to give some foundation plantings. I don't know what the grades are doing, so that might create some challenges, but I think it'd be great if you could try to identify some places to put plantings there on that north side of the building. So that was one of my comments. A couple of detail related comments. Details 4 and 5 on L4.03, the Tabby Pier. It just called for a black metal sign face. Typically, the design review board has an aversion to black and white and high contrasting colors, so you may want to re-examine that before you come back for final. And also on this sheet, at that detail at the top, the bocce court, I think that detail is really cool, but I was a little concerned about how comfortable the whole oyster shell finish would be as a seat backing. I think it's a really cool detail, and material was certainly appropriate for Hilton Head, but I kind of question how comfortable that would be, so just something to consider. And the only lighting related comment I had is for the bollard lights in the parking lot. I was a little curious I don't have any problem with it. I was a little curious why you guys chose to do that in lieu of a more traditional area light. So if you could respond to that, I was just kind of curious.
Yes, so we're trying to be sensitive to the environment, especially being by the beach there, and wanted to keep the lighting at a low level and indirect. Okay,
I understand, certainly appreciate that. Of course, we'll be looking for fixture cut sheets when you come back for final. Like I said, I have no problem with what you're showing, but there's going to be a lot of those bollards, so we'll certainly want to know what it looks like. And but other than that, I think it's a great looking project, and I believe it's heading in the right direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, David. Mr. Karstens?
Yes, I think outstanding I'm a landscape architect, so I'm going to speak to the things I'm a little more versed on. I have to agree with staff's comments as far as plantings, and I know that's something that's going to get drilled into for final, especially with some of those smaller cells, just the simplicity's sake. It is pretty nice underneath the oaks there on the northern side, towards under those oaks and all, being able to accentuate that. But I know a lot of the beds in the Harbortown area, they've got some pretty simple compositions to them. So if you have that accent, accent appropriately. I agree with Mr. McAllister when it comes to those shell walls. I know oftentimes there's a hone tabby treatment is often a very appealing, and you still get a similar vibe. It's either that or mixing in the smaller oyster shell sizes in the finish can oftentimes reduce that, those sharp edges. Especially in this area, you do have a lot of kind of levels, and you still very much have that harbor walk in there. And oftentimes you've got so many people stacked in on different places that, they're bound to be up against your vertical surfaces. So again, I'd say, seek a smoother finish or a hone tabby would be a great accommodation. What I would say is more of a transparent handrail. It's that single rail. Obviously, it appeared from the plans that was associated with more of the dining area, knowing that there'd be tables and such associated with that. Just being conscious of the drops off of the other sides of that, knowing that you are not. Oftentimes we see cable rail, in those situations, but appreciating that you're trying to keep it a little more open. And then finally, I was looking at the lighting plan and I was just trying to confirm the thoughts on, okay, so the string lights are associated with the gangway and along the couple boardwalks. Oftentimes, and I think it might be within a lot of the areas around here, string lights are isolated to more of the dining, more of the static areas. So when it comes to running string lights along high traffic areas, making sure we get the coverage that we want as far as illuminating things. Maybe there might be the opportunity, especially on that northern side, of just having more of a lower level light. And I'm a little less concerned about the oak trees, the uplighting and downlighting with that. There are really nice ways of being able to do that. So I'm hoping that on that northern side, the illumination within the trees and maybe focusing on the lower level lighting will help out. And, maybe just the string lights get really focused on more of the dining. I do like the idea of that gangway and the finish that's going to have for the railing. So I think if that was shown as a section or highlighted in the next set of presentation documents, it would really help out in the understanding. But otherwise, like I said, everything looks great. I'm on board with a lot of the staff comment, and I appreciate the effort put forward. If one of my architectural cohorts have something else that sparks a question, I'll be sure to speak up. Thank you.
Jen? Ms. Lippert.
So I'm on the architect side, and as you could tell, I just initially struggled a little bit to understand the extent of the project, and I'm just going to take it at face value that everything that is getting touched is allowed to be incorporated as far as, and Chris, I'm going to ask that you chime in if there's something, but I'm assuming since you recommended for approval, so changes to the lighthouse entry and all of that is perfectly acceptable within the scope of this project.
That's correct. That's correct. The existing nonconformities, they're allowed to maintain.
Okay. So because I didn't totally understand some of the program, my initial hesitation was about the Harbor Master Pavilion, because when you're on site, it does block the new location does block the view. But I do fully understand that the program, if that's the visibility the Harbor Master needs, then that is, unfortunately, let's say at the loss of the public of having that open expanse view. So if that can't shift because of those programmatic reasons, I can certainly understand that. But I do feel that pavilion will close down the view out to the ocean and out of the harbor pretty significantly. And I'm just kind of going in order. While I would typically not sort of comment on the landscape items, that utility area at the new vehicular drop-off area, I would like to see that will get heavily planted, because it is in the very public plaza area, so that hopefully sort of disappears. And bear with me as I'm writing, because I have the sense this will get tossed to me to do the recommendation. Planting at utility area. I think it's going to be a really nice upgrade as far as the building as a whole. I think that just, it is a very detailed submittal for concept, but it also gives us the opportunity to see, while we like activated facades, I do think that there's a lot going on in these facades of a different language happening right next to each other. I guess I would review whether there is a need for any of the standing seam roofs, because to me they are so few and far between that they do tend to, aside from maybe that one shed roof, but the smaller shed roof on the way I printed it out, all I'm seeing is A3.01. They feel more like add-ons by switching roof material than helping integrate and activate the roof line, which I think we're always fans of activating the roof lines. But aside from that one shed roof, the large shed roof, I don't know that the standing seam roofs are adding to the architecture in a way that helps the reading. The other aspect of fenestration that I really struggled with is the heavy simulated divided lights next to the full light glazing. And it feels like a very stark contrast to me. And it just, every time I looked at it again, that seemed to catch my eye as an element that I think just look at it again, see if there's a greater consistency of where it does or does not happen. And bear with me as I take a couple notes here on the overall list. And continuing on to A3.03, we're looking at the side that has the service yard and some of the two-story elements. And I don't know if this is your intention. Is this going to be with the siding having a mitered corner detail and therefore no corner trim, no vertical corner trim? That's to the applicant.
Yes, we're showing it's a double lap, so there's a large lap siding board and then a smaller one just below it because of the scale of the wall, and then we're showing mitered corners on that.
Okay. Um,
That's true also on the Harbor Master building.
okay, right, and it's not a full 45 miter, so it's a, so as long as you've checked that that's a siding material that can handle those miters.
Yes, we are in that process now,
Okay.
working through that detail.
And I mean, to me, in looking at the elevations, something to maybe look at is whether any of the roof overhangs can get larger. I see the low country language of the exposed rafter tails. I do think for the scale of the building, the overhangs could stand to be a little bit bigger. And then the only detail that I specifically sort of caught my eye is on the fabric of the guardrail, the proposal of the large Q. And I believe that would fall under signage and therefore would have to be a separate submittal. And if I'm, yep, there it was, the large Q on L 4.02. So I believe that would have to be a separate submittal, and I believe if that is in fact intended on every panel, it would exceed the signage limits.
Right, just to note there, that is purely a placeholder put in by the landscape architect. That is not the logo or identity mark for the project at all. Graphic design has not yet begun, so it's just to indicate the intent. I think it would not be that scale, so we can give you more detail next time.
That's what I'm just cautioning. Signage is a separate submittal, and
Right.
there are limits on the amount for the project. So I just wanted to, just because I saw it, even if it's a placeholder, will be smaller, but I just think if it really ends up being all around, my gut says, again, you would have to check the math. My gut says likely you would be exceeding signage, allowed signage amounts.
Right, okay, understood.
Just to this is Chris with the town of Hilton Head. Just to reinforce what Ms. Lippert said, she's correct. You have a limited amount of square foot for signage, and that would count towards your square footage.
Okay, understood, thank you.
That's all I had. I really do think it will be a nice upgrade. So thank you, thorough submittal.
Thanks for your comments. We'll take all of that under consideration and have a response.
Ed, before you go, do you have any comments on the colors?
I have to admit, I did not super focus on the colors, being that it was conceptual. Where is the red being proposed?
So that's reference for the lighthouse. So
I see.
that's not on anything on the new building, that's just there for context. And the lower range of swatches are proposed.
Right. I mean, I saw a staff comment about some of the colors potentially being too white, like the white sand. So yes, that's something we're going to have to check. I already essentially recommended less of the standing seam, so the galvalume in essence potentially dropping out in all but the one location. Galvalume is typically not a color we accept because of its high reflectivity, so it may have to be rethought. But
Right.
I guess other than that, nothing jumps out as super stark to me. I like the use of the tabby in the facade.
Great. Yeah,
Thanks.
the intent is to be in the color range of the beach club, which I think this panel or your predecessors approved. And it is, I believe that's where the white sand came from, but we can confirm that and put it in, contrast for you so you understand.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could confirm that color. If that was used on the beach club, David, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Annette. Ms. Rimke.
Now can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited about this project. I think it's going to be great down there, and I love the building. A lot of the comments that I had have already been articulated. The one about the roof with the standing on large area of standing seam would be sufficient. I like the colors. I'm looking forward to a little bit more articulation on the landscape, but I think this is a very good start. Look forward to the rest of it. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Debbie. Mr. Molesky.
Yes, thanks. I guess in no particular order here, and I'll probably repeat some of the things that I heard before, but I would almost, take it a step further than what Annette had shared as far as the harbor master. I'm sure you put some thought into it, and I'm probably going to be a tougher sell here. As someone who's visited here since 1980, so I kind of have a little different appreciation for what the harbor town is. But I would ask the circulation as it relates to the new location of the harbor master. Whether they want people riding bikes around there or not, it's still a reality, as well as all the pedestrian traffic. And it looks like, are those little gas pumps or fueling pumps to remain, as shown right there?
Yes, the gas pumps remain. There will be some work to them, but they essentially stay in approximately the same location. And the harbor master's office itself is up 3 risers, so it's up about 1.5 feet from the shell path.
So what's an approximate distance there between where that fence is around the fueling pumps and and I don't know if those are just dashed lines to represent a change in material, or?
The dashed line around the harbor master is its overhanging eave. We
Okay.
have a required 10-foot setback from the harbor, which we maintain for the operation of the harbor, and that's the circular, the yacht basin. And once you get out to the line along the channel, we have an 8-foot required clearance, and that's for maintenance along that area. But those are our required easements. So everything about the harbor master, including its eave and the steps and the ramp up to it, all stand back from that setback.
Now, what about though that fence though around the pump? What's an approximate distance there from that fence to where that harbor master is?
That's 8 feet at that location.
And what
At
about
the narrowest?
It's a smaller area.
That
Maybe
it's
6 feet?
It's 8 feet from the overhang on the harbor master to the fence surrounding the pumps.
Because I could just see that just kind of being a problem, not that people are running around there full blast or whatever, but when you're casually walking around, it's usually mom and dad and a couple kids, and nobody's walking single file. Was there any consideration to relocating those the pumps? Would be the first question.
Yes, we're working to modify the fence that surrounds the pumps. It's actually not a secure fence, it's a screen. You can just walk around. It does control some access to the pumps by the public, but we're looking at modifying it and reducing the total footprint of that fence. I will also say that it's 8 feet to the eave of the harbor master, and then the eave is projecting another 1.5 feet or so. So at grade, there's something like 9.5 feet clear. And then if we can get the fence to move back towards the pumps, we'll do that too.
I mean, I would just challenge whoever it is. They're spending all the money on this project. It's a shame just to keep those two fueling stations where they're at. And again, I don't have a boat in there, and I don't know what it takes to make all that happen. But again, it's kind of a shame that we're doing this whole project and then we're stuck leaving those fueling stations there. So I would think something could be done about that. And it just feels tight around that corner there, whether it's 8 feet or 9.5 feet or whatever it is. That just seems like a missed opportunity, with everybody that's here in the summertime that parades around that corner there. I think that could be better. And back to what Annette was saying, I think that just kills all the views there. There's got to be another place to put a couple people there to make sure that the boats are getting out good. I don't know who lobbied to put that right there, but that just doesn't seem like the ideal place for it for what that's worth. And I'm sure you guys are wonderful people, so don't take it as I'm trying to be hypercritical about things, but that's just kind of, I think, what I'm tasked to do here as far as that goes. So I don't know if that could be elevated. I don't know if that could have been relocated so it's more of an appendage to the main building up high and out of sight, so it's not blocking those views. But boy, that corner view is nice, and now it's gone.
John, this is Cliff McMacken with Sea Pines, and I think I might be able to help with a little bit of perspective on a couple of the comments that you made.
Please.
The fuel pumps, they do need to remain there. They're actually more of the control devices for the pumping that occurs along that fuel dock. So if it was like a remote pump we could relocate, we would. Those are actually relocated back behind the Harbor House A building. But so these devices do have to be within a hose's length of the boat that it's fueling.
And they can't be brought down lower because they're too close to a certain elevation of the water in case there's a rise in the tide? Or?
It is. The fluctuations in they would have to be hard piped with the fuel service lines that don't have the flexibility to rise, up and down 8 or 9 feet every day. So now I will say that, we are going to do the most we can to maybe even lessen some of the screening that's there to try to, because they're not very tall elements, they're only about 4 feet high. And so if we could just, keep them low, our plans are to do that. And the Harbor Master office location, I mean, we studied this at length because there's really no great location for it. But the number one things that they are required from an operational standpoint are to maintain close proximity to these fuel devices for safety purposes and access to the fuel dock. So they have to be along that edge. And they also have to maintain a clear view of the harbor entrance. They're directing traffic all day. And that's a safety concern as well. So when you look at where you can put them along this peninsula, this corner actually is the worst views of the new of the site. And it's a little bit difficult to get good perspective on where that is compared to where the building is today, because the building that's there today is sort of skewed counterclockwise. And it looks back into the harbor more so than the new building. The new building, we rotated clockwise so that it framed up the 3 primary views. And so that south elevation is squared up perfectly on the golf hole. Okay. So you're going to look out of a great big picture window and see the 18th hole and the pin and everything. The elevation to the east looks directly into the harbor, so you get those boats. And then the west is out to the Calabogie sunsets. This corner, the southeast, where we located the harbor master's office, the only views you're really blocking are of those condos closest to the harbor channel. And so it's really not the greatest views, which is why we ended up with that location, while it still has the access and viewpoints that it needs. But one additional point I'll make is that due to the allowance in the or the floodplain manager's scope, Sherry has confirmed that this building is going to be able to be built on grade. So it's going to be much lower. The finished floor elevation is going to be at least 2 feet lower than the finished floor of the main building. So, just as progression of finished floor elevations within the building sort of step up from the decks to the interior space, and then obviously from the second floor, it should be less of an issue. But just a couple of notes. One other thing, from the site plan perspective, yeah, we do get a lot of traffic around that corner that walk around the building along the fuel docks and back. And I think today, most people do that, but just because they don't know any better. And we do get the sense that when guests get back there, they realize, oh, wait a minute, this is sort of a utilitarian area. There's fueling, there's gators moving back and forth for the marine operations. And you kind of get the sense, am I even supposed to be back here? So we're hopeful that the new plan with the introduction of the boardwalk is going to be more inviting. And so as you come around the harbor, you're going to choose, do I use the boardwalk I'll see the pier, in the background of the boardwalk, and it'll be more of an intuitive way to just like nonchalantly flow. But if I have a purpose to go to the lighthouse or a purpose to go to the restaurant, I'll continue down around the harbor. But we really don't want to encourage pedestrians to continue to use that fuel dock area. It's not the best guest experience where they could stay on the north side of the building and truly get the exciting elements that we're creating.
Well, no, that's great. I appreciate that. And that was kind of the answer I was hoping for, that someone actually put all the brain damage into to these things. And I would like to assume that was the case, but I appreciate you pointing that out to me. That helps me, and I'm sure others would agree. And it almost seems like you're saying, aside from building a little fence at the harbor master that says, keep out, turn around, no one beyond this point, that is kind of the intention, that you're not really looking to have people circulate around the building there as they're used to in the past.
That's correct.
Without putting in such signage. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'll continue if I may. As far as, I don't know where the reception area is, and I see something that says market, SAP. I'm sorry, I can't.
So there is a market component to the program, which is a carry-out shop that would have sundries, some food, groceries, as well as it would also have a to-go counter related to the kitchen. You could order seafood and other things hot to go out of that market venue. Also, there's an existing ice cream shop in the quarterdeck building, so ice cream would be offered inside the market. And that's positioned so that it faces to the north onto this boardwalk extension.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an open porch that you can go up and directly into the market there. The market also connects back into the restaurant. So if people want to finish dinner or whatever and go straight in and have some ice cream and then go for a walk or outside, they can do that through the market as well.
Oh, I know where the ice cream place is. You don't have to worry about that. So what I was kind of leading to is if it, the summer months when it's crowded and someone goes and checks in, where's the dedicated, if you will, area for the families to hang out with all the bad kids that can't sit still for 5 minutes? Is there a little run around containment area or?
Yeah, I was probably one of those kids in my life. But yes, so we have this sort of gangway experience that you go up to the front door, and once you go in, you're not yet in the restaurant, you're in this sort of reception area, which would have a bench, there'll be some art. It's a fairly large space in there. Those doors are overscaled that you see swinging. The main entrance door is overscaled, so there's space in there to wait. There's also, this sort of network and paths. Of course, now everybody's on open table. You get a text message when your table's ready. So some of these paths, the boardwalk experience, maybe even going down to the corner, looking at the harbor master area, are all diversions while you're waiting. We've also, this hasn't come up, but along the harbor front, we have a couple of sort of areas set in with a step up where we're introducing additional red rocker areas, so there'll be more places to sit that way along the harbor. So there's things to do.
So that's not necessarily just for people that have been seated there that want to listen to outdoor entertainment. That's kind of a waiting area per se as well.
Well, the terraces where the hand is right now, those would be just for paying customers that would come in and take a seat for dinner.
Okay, and then along those lines there, that would, like one of the comments I made, I mean, the bocce court might be cool, but I don't know if maybe something that more family friendly might be more conducive. I'm sure you guys have probably went back and forth on some different things there, but
I think the bocce court is, it's not going to be dedicated to bocce. I think it's maybe more likely there would be cornhole or something, that kids could do, families could do together.
Okay, that's good. And again, I'm sure the answer to this question here is something you put some thought in, but okay, I'm up at the top of the lighthouse and I'm looking down. I know we need air conditioning units and all the other mechanical components to this new building that we're doing here. But what are some ingenious ways you've come up with to try to disguise some of those more unsightly items?
Yeah, maybe we could go to the roof plan. Oops, we just passed it. Well, this is helpful. So this is a section through the building. The building, the inspiration for the double gable that faces the golf course from that view across the green at the building was partly to create that vision across the channel there, but it also had a practical side, which it gave us this opportunity to create a recessed well at the rooftop and to use the space between the two peaks of the two gables to house all of our mechanical equipment. And so pretty much, everything is fitted in there and it's set to be lower than the ridge line. We don't want to be able to see mechanical units sticking out the top of the building from the golf course. That's an important view. And also from across the harbor and across the water. So that the profile will be clean across the top of the building.
And I guess though, from the vantage point of the lighthouse looking down, now all these things need to kind of be open air to allow ventilation to occur, or is there any type of screening that could be placed? Or
they do need to be open. All these units have clear open space around them and have to be open to the sky. Mm-hmm. I think when you're up in the lighthouse, you would have to be looking really straight down over the edge to get a glimpse of it.
Well, I think it's definitely a big improvement with just having a lot of the pitched roof and stuff that you show around the perimeter. I think will lessen any impact that might currently be. And then I'm assuming this might be more of a site thing. The walkways that aren't the boardwalk will continue to be that same type of gravel that exists.
Yeah, the perimeter of the whole property will continue to be the crushed oyster shell, which is the loose oyster shells that are used around the harbor now. Mm-hmm. The main approach up to the building and that sort of curving path and the boardwalk are all raised wooden platforms. We're doing that in part to protect the live oak trees instead of building retaining walls and all sorts of other structural elements in there. We're trying to sort of go gingerly across the landscape through there to preserve the trees.
Then it looks like that's a perfect picture you have up right there. So that straight expanse there, we'll call it 10 or 12 foot wide. That's the boardwalk component of it.
Right. So the concept from the beginning has been to try to draw the pier all the way down to the harbor. Right now, I think a lot of guests or visitors come and they don't even know the pier is over there because they don't venture through the park. There's sort of a parking lot. It looks like it, and sometimes they go out to where the harbor master is, like Cliff said, and they might, start to go around the corner. But there's a lot of activities on the pier that we want to integrate to part of this experience, and that's the idea of this extended wide wooden walkway coming across. So the market really is envisioned to be sort of sitting on the pier extension, and the foot of the pier comes all the way down to the harbor.
Okay, so it's almost enough just to catch people's attention at that one little wood circle there, get them walking down there, and once they make it halfway down, then hopefully visually they see
Right.
the other boardwalk and continue.
And that was to the earlier comment about the string lights. That was one of the impulses for the string lights, was to create literally this line that would sort of emphasize that connection all the way down and onto the lights on the pier.
And I'm sure, is that why that boardwalk is just very linear as opposed to having any type of meandering component to it then, to mimic what's going on out on
Yes,
south?
the straight part of it at the bottom of the page is ramping up off the grade. So it's very much like a dock or a pier element.
Okay. And there's plenty of seating, again, not that you haven't thought this, but I don't know, along that boardwalk there to create little, little nooks for people to sit along the way and gather, or is there already plenty of other seating other than the red rocking chairs that hopefully are maintained?
No, we have plenty of seating. We expect that this market will be popular, and people will come and get, shrimp baskets and oyster baskets and come out and want to sit outside in the shade under the trees. So there's a couple options. This covered porch at the market, there's actually a sort of lunch counter on the rail, so you can sit up on the porch at a stool facing out. And then just below that, there's a seat that's at the base of the porch, and so that's almost like a long banquette or a bench. And there would be loose tables and chairs, sort of park-like, sort of metal tables and chairs that would be lining that bench. And then there, surrounding that in the sort of space around the porch, we're also calling for additional park-like loose tables and chairs, sort of cafe-type seating that you can sort of pull two tables together yourself or make do in under there. So there's quite a bit of seating. And then just left and right of where the cursor is, there are some areas under the trees on grade, a couple steps down into an area under the trees where there would be more tables and chairs to sit.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that's a good opportunity that I see there, is just to kind of make it like a cool little place, just to kind of be a part of things, but still kind of have a little bit of space.
Yeah, and if you have a cup of coffee from somewhere else and you can come over here too. It would just be, public seating at that.
And that seems very well thought out, so that looks great. And it looks like that boardwalk goes right where that little sunken circular area is today with the anchor that's in the middle then? Is that kind of...
Yes, that's right. Our evaluation of that area was that it was, not really being used as originally intended, and that this would be a better way to activate it and bring people into the site.
Now, to pick on the around the base of the lighthouse, it looks like that all the seating or decking that's currently around the lighthouse, all that goes away, and it looks like that the current entrance to the lighthouse now is being moved to more the harbor side facing, and looks like there's going to be a direct walkway or pathway to the main entrance of the restaurant. Is that
right? So we've tried to give the three key elements of the project their own address on the harbor. So the restaurant has its address up the gangway. The lighthouse, the entrance has been relocated to the east, facing the harbor, so it would be visible from the harbor by passersby, so that they might be more enticed to come in there. Right now, you can walk by the lighthouse and not even know that there's an entrance around the back side of it. So it will have its own sort of presence on the harbor. And then, of course, the market via the boardwalk we've been discussing.
okay? So that's good there. And then all like those kiosks that are kind of off of the parking lot area, those are all going away for like the jet ski and the pirate ship rental boat and all that stuff.
No, those will be relocated, and we're studying that now, but they will probably be distributed so that because they each have their own clientele, and they need to have some separation between them. So one of them may go in the park area under the live oak trees. One of them will go where we're showing it, that just is marked kiosk, and another one may stay more or less where we have the existing one.
So I'd assume, like for final, if there's any details that you would provide for those kiosks, if they're not
Yes.
existing to remain, then that would be in keeping with the design of the whole big project?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Where it says vehicular drop-off, is that meant to be like a little circle area there, then where a car could come in, and that radius or diameter of that circular is appropriate then for a passenger vehicle then to do just that?
That's right. It's a 45-foot diameter circle in there, so a normal passenger vehicle can make that turn. Larger vehicles would have to do a 3-point in there, but that's possible. It also allows us to bring, to do some valet service if the operations choose to do that on any given evening, to help with the parking. And then also the emergency vehicle access is through that point. So we're actually improving all of those elements and handicap parking. This plan is an improvement over the existing plan.
Is there any fire pits or fire features or things like that that seems to kind of be a hot commodity these days planned anywhere for the site?
We are planning some locations which are related to the terraces that surround really the south end of the building, which is page left. And those would be gas. They would be plumbed gas fire pits, locations that would be seasonal. So during the summer, the fire pit device would be taken away and it would be just tables and chairs. And then during the colder season, the fire pit device would be connected to the plumbed connection and then used that way.
Okay, thank you. How about any additional public restrooms to be incorporated in this project?
So just above the lighthouse location there in the plan, there is a cluster of bathrooms, which will be accessible from the exterior without going into the market, without going into the quarterdeck. It's really seen as, I think first and foremost, it's sort of seen as a convenience for the boaters. It's part of the yacht operations to be able to provide facilities for them, but it would be open also to the public.
Okay. Sounds good.
This is Chris Darnell with the town. If I might interrupt, if we could go back to the fire pits, do you know by any chance the distance from the building to those open flames?
Not offhand, but we can certainly provide that. It's
just a quick concern, and we'll have the fire marshal look at that. But I believe the requirement is a 10-foot separation between an open flame and the building.
I was going to sort of just say 10 feet nominally, but we can get that precise.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I thought you were going to tell me I went beyond my 10-minute allotted time. As far as exterior elevations, I see a lot of the tabby on there. Is there going to be any board and batten or cedar shake on the wall? I see you have cedar that you're using for the roof shingles. Any wall material?
We don't have any walls that are shake or shingle.
So all the walls are tabby?
We have the double weatherboarding, the local brick, the tabby, and then trim, which would be painted.
You know, my 2 cents on that is I'd like to see it broken. It feels a little too formal. It feels too much like a clubhouse maybe to me. And again, I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but again, now's the time to to share those opinions there. I don't know if something that softens it up. I mean, I guess maybe just some of the elevations I'm seeing, maybe I'm seeing more tabby than I would like to see. I mean, that elevation there, I guess it looks like I see a lot of horizontal. Is that like an artisan material that you plan on mitering, or is that going to be just cedar or cypress that's open for ventilation?
It's siding done in a double lap, mitered at the corners and painted, but it's a double weatherboard detail, which we can also provide more information on.
Maybe if there's a way to incorporate that in other parts of the building. To me, I'm just seeing maybe too much tabby, and again, that's just my personal opinion, but I'll be happy to share that. Other than that, thank you for all your work and all your time listening to my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Ms. Foss?
First of all, thank you for, I think, the best and most, the best conceptual presentation we've seen. And I think Mr. McAllister said it best in that you printed so much detail that it allowed the board to really give you some good feedback. And I commend the board, from what I've heard already, for some really great feedback. So this project's gonna shine, I think. My comments come back to the standing seam roof. I'm not a fan of standing seam roofs unless they're non-reflective. I agree that there's too many of them, and that could be cut down, or if you could bring in a painted color for those standing seam roofs so that they're not reflective. I'm going to be totally against reflective standing seam roofs because it'll take away from the beauty that you've got and from the view from the harbor. The boats coming in don't need to see that kind of shining example, so to speak. The white sand, and then this all comes back to a comment that I had in my mind, and I think John said it earlier, is this place doesn't need to match the clubhouse. The clubhouse is kind of in a nice forested area. It doesn't have that many buildings around it. And on the harbor, we've already looked at projects where people are trying to work with that original Portofino concept. And this thing is kind of looking like the clubhouse and not looking like it belongs in Harbor Town. There's no way I wanted to go and look like the project we just approved on those colors, but all the buildings, the shops, all the way around there have more of that Portofino look. It's subtle, and that's good, but this one is like stepping way back from that. And while I really like the look of this building, I'm wondering if you shouldn't bring in some more of that Portofino look. That's my opinion. What else? Oh, and even if the white sand was approved at the clubhouse, again, we're on the water. The reflection is going to be there, so we're going to be very concerned about white. And even if we approved it for the clubhouse, which isn't on the water, we may not approve it here as seeing it as too white.
Just a quick clarification,
Sure.
that was on the beach club where that color was used.
Okay, sorry. I was looking at clubhouse and
But we'll take it in your comment into consideration.
thank you. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
One other quick follow-up is there are other elements of the building which are nods towards the rest of town. The colorful shutters, we have some metal work. The handrails are all sort of wrought iron. We have decorative light fixtures, which are trying to continue sort of a European coastal feel. So it's there are elements to the building where we've tried to be consistent with that, and then other elements where we've tried to sort of play the part of the sort of ending view of the sort of classic view tied to the golf course. So, we have this unique site that's sort of part of 2 or 3 adjacent neighborhoods that we're trying to be mindful of.
And I get the issue that you're dealing with totally. I would think that just playing with that white sand might help the predicament a little bit.
Okay,
Thank you.
great.
Kathy? All right. Yeah, a lot of good comments. And I think everybody pretty much covered everything. My only critique is the multiple style of dormers that you got going. You got some gables, some sheds, and some hips. I'd just as soon see that limited. There was one poking out that looked like a gable. Where did it go? Yeah, on the let's see, go sheet. Oh, I'm looking at the landscape drawings. Hold on.
I think the gables are limited to the large roofs at the ends, but the
One on L301. I don't know. I got stuck on the landscape drawings. That's why I was looking at that one. Right there. Right, yep. Right. Right there. Is that just one poking out behind another roof, or is that
that's actually the one of the ends of the double
the
roof.
double? Okay,
It's
all right. So
golf.
that's not a
This is
dormer.
the back end of it. It's really up over another roof, so it won't be very apparent. But it's
Okay.
meant to be
Yeah,
one of
I just
the high gables.
I just read that wrong on that particular drawing. Okay, it's on the one below it. It's the same elevation, and there's 2 different style of dormers. I just found that a little off kilter, but if that's the worst comment I can come up with, that means you did a pretty good job in my book. I agree with the first comment from let me see who said it. Miss Lippert. About the standing seam metal on just the dormers. I'm fine with that if it's not a reflective color like Miss Foss brought up. If it's something that more blends into the roof color, if your shingles are a weathered wood color, then that standing seam should probably be more in that vein. A darker color, not a shiny one, because they're not architectural features that you necessarily want to draw the eye to. I mean, they're okay, but I think Ms. Foss had a good point that on a sunny day, those will be the things that kind of stand out. So I don't have a problem with putting standing seam over a porch or over a dormer and everything else be shakes, but the color would be the important thing to me. I guess we'll see real samples at the next submittal for the white sand and the shingles and all that. But overall, I think it's great. There was a lot of discussion on the location of the harbor master. I think you made a good point as where else would you put it? Seems to be a functional spot, and I don't think it really blocks anything. So I have no comment on that. I think it becomes part of the architecture and part of the landscape. So I think it looks really good myself. So I think there was a comment that there might be too much tabby. I don't really agree with that comment because a good portion of the lower level is windows and trim. And then you got those big gables with the tabby, like right there, that makes sense. So you wouldn't want to break that up. And then you got that double lap siding in certain areas. So, overall, I think it's a good job. And I look forward to seeing the final.
Right.
Anyone else need a second round?
Michael?
Oh, yeah, Judd.
Yeah, I want to tell Cliff thank you for kind of outlining how the orientation of the building is differing from what's out there now. I certainly understand where the harbor master is, and then really emphasizing that circulation that he and David hit on, that the circulation is going to be pushing more across that northern side of the building. I think that plays into my comment on the string lights. The current pier has a lot of gooseneck fixtures, and I think that might be another fixture you'd want to consider being able to tie the pier back to the harbor along that line. So in lieu of the string lights, the gooseneck, and maybe since you have the string lights on the gangway, they can maybe even introduced at that bocce area as something fun. And when those string lights come in, we'll obviously want to understand how they're mounted as far as the posts and such. Let me see. Oh, and one last thing. David had Mr. McAllister had a concern about that outside of that sundry shop and being able to have a planting area. I think that counter makes a lot of sense, but I still think we might want to leave an opportunity for just something to soften that side. I mean, hopefully we'll have a lot of traffic and we'll have a lot of seating associated with it. But if we give ourselves at least an opportunity to soften that side, that northern side of the building, with either the ability to bring in some palmettos, or just it doesn't have to be big, large areas, but just something along that facade up against the building would probably help out a lot.
Right.
Oh, and one last thing. I swear it's the last thing. The outdoor bar service. I finally comprehended that half circle down by the harbor master building. We'll want to be conscious. Lower with the cursor, and to the left, up. It's basically right there. Yep, right there. So that little half circle, obviously there's going to be an exposure on the backside of that service to that pathway into the harbor. We'll just want to make sure we get an appropriate amount of screening. And since that is kind of a feature down there, we'll probably need to see at final how that's going to be finished. It's nice that lower level kind of has its own component with the stage and all, and then you have another tier, and then you're inside the building. So I appreciate that. Those were just some things I was able to notice along with when everybody else was making comments. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else, Chris included, need to add anything else?
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Good. Okay. I can't see everybody, so there we go. No hands are raised. All right. Would anyone? Oh, did you raise your hand?
Sorry, I was on mute. I would like a second.
Okay.
So in hearing the various conversations about how the thought is about the flow coming to that northwestern side and towards the existing pier, that makes me concerned about how pinched the service yard next to that existing boat rental kiosk is making that pathway that is now going to be significantly tighter than the existing condition. So I ask that the shape of that service yard be reviewed to make that less of a pinch point, and also less of since we're now saying that's really our main route that we want the pedestrians to take, we're now routing them past the back of the house elements. So I think that needs to be made more pedestrian friendly, and its shape made such that it doesn't pinch the walkway as much. And I'd like to go back to that utility area, because on one of the drawings I saw that it sends you to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing drawings. I mean, is there going to be noisy equipment in there? Because that is, again, opening up to the area that the public is using.
That the main piece of equipment in there is a transformer. It exists there today, and it's in an enclosure which is slightly differently configured. We're leaving the transformer in its location because it was just put in and it's quite expensive to move. But we're just reconfiguring that the fence around it to make way for the motor court. We were able to do that without impacting the transformer itself.
Okay, and the final comment I have is I was not able to see the gangway fabric canopy in any of the elevations. Did I miss that? Because again, I still do have the concern that the Harbor Master Pavilion is blocking the view for the public. While I understand the explanation about how the new building orientation is fantastic for all the occupants of the building, for the people of the who are just visiting the public spaces, I think that Harbor Master Pavilion still is negatively impacting. And then the more I look at it, this canopy of the gangway is yet further blocking that view. Is it shown in any of the elevations?
Isabella, do we have that in this?
Missed that, but we can most certainly show it in the final. We have it detailed pretty clearly, and it's dashed into the landscape drawing there. You can sort of see a heavier weighted dashed line. In terms of public experience of that area, the lighthouse is really overpowering that canopy there. It's just sort of sticking out far enough that someone walking along the crushed shells path would be able to see it as an indication of the restaurant to the entry to the restaurant. And you really wouldn't be, when you're standing on the other side of the lighthouse, that's going to be the last thing you're looking at, really.
I'm just saying I'm going to be looking for that one with a particular focus during final because I feel that this view is getting pinched by several elements, that canopy included, the Harbor Master Pavilion included, which maybe that Harbor Master Pavilion can shift a little bit more off that corner and a little bit more, let's say, I guess it's towards west, essentially. To shift up on the drawing. I am concerned about the public's view being impinged now by two elements of the project.
I think
Thank
it
you for my second go around.
just to respond, just to add some information. I don't know if we can go to one of the site plans that has the proposed site plan. It might be towards the beginning of the set. There, that one. So this is the proposed site plan, that the dark hatched footprint, and around it you can see really at a 45-degree angle, you can see the dashed lines of the existing building to be demolished. So when people are coming around the shell path now, their view is being cut off by that outermost tip of the building today. So actually, by rotating the building 45 degrees, we picked up these views that Cliff was talking about, directly into the harbor, directly down to Gulf, and directly out to the sunset. But we also felt like we were opening up that the whole end of the harbor so that it was much more light and airy, and so you get a bigger aperture between the seawall at the harbor itself and the new corner of the building than what currently exists, if that helps.
I hope you're right. I spent an hour out there on Saturday with the drawings, orienting myself next to the existing building and sort of spacing out where the new facade faces are and new pavilion proposed and all this. Just my impression, it's impinging in two manners on the current public view.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Just as a reminder to the applicant, the canopy fabric should be included in the color board. Also on that, I see on the I missed it earlier. On the second level, there's a large area of fabric too that needs to be included.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a comment I wanted to add. Now that Ms. Lipper kind of, and you could go back to that previous site plan you had out, was helpful. So now back to, okay, we got the new boardwalk, but the intention is to try to get people to make that right, walk down the boardwalk and head around that way. And again, this is just me talking as a parent with 3 young kids. So where we got the vehicular drop-off area there, now if that's going to be where most people are going to be parading by, is there any way, and this might have to, you might have to lose a little bit of a parking space here, but any thoughts into creating, I don't know, make up a number here, like a 5-foot buffer. So right where that vehicular drop-off semicircle is, maybe 5 feet off of that, have some plantings or something, just something low, just so as people are walking by, it kind of visually creates a little separation between, hey, here's the walking path to head out to the boardwalk, and this is where we go to wait for someone to pick you up or drop you off. So it's not, it's not as tempting for children to run into that vehicular drop-off area, if you will.
Right.
So that would be one comment there I'd ask you to maybe to give some consideration to. And then the other would be is now that I'm seeing, it's jogging my memory how the utility area is there with the dumpsters, and I don't know if it's all built out of 4x4 post and 6 foot tall or whatever. But again, if everyone's going to be walking past there to make sure there's an effort into making that look as attractive as you could make a wooden wall that's covering up dumpsters look, as I'm sure you
John, to piggyback on that, I think it is very much a not utilitarian, but it's very much like an active space. And, the harbor is kind of an active area. I would say maybe bollards, similar. I think bollards might be a more appropriate spatial use to separate the vehicular from the pedestrian, and at least creating that perception of a vertical barrier there if you're trying to get some separation. It's either that or is that all flush there, David, that courtyard, or is there going to be a curb associated with those spaces?
It's flush.
Yeah, so maybe the bollards, it doesn't even have to be the tabby piers. It could be a metal bollard, but maybe that's another opportunity there.
Right. We'll look at that. Definitely. It is we want the pier to retain its sort of working character and feel.
Thank you.
And bollards might, work with that.
Thank you.
Hey, John? Anybody else? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I took very detailed notes, so I will dive in, and people can feel free
motion
to.
from Ms. Lippert.
So I make a motion for approval of DRB 000212-2021 with the following conditions. All of staff comments. The north side of the wood boardwalk to have some plant beds added to them. Detail 4 and 5 on L 4.03 to review the color of the sign face, as black will likely not be approved. Detail 6 to review the tabby seat back with the recommendation of potentially introducing smaller tabbies or honed edge tabby to make it more user-friendly. A reminder to provide light fixture cut sheets at final. Reminder that Sea Pines ARB approval be provided at final. There was one comment I'm eventually going to have to get help on, which had to do with the transparency of the handrail. So whoever had that, please keep that in mind for helping me modify it later. Comments about the string lights typically being isolated to dining room areas, not as directional, and that the potential to use gooseneck lamps for the directional type, to review light levels where string lights will be used, and to provide a mounting detail where string lights will be used, to heavily plant around the utility area that houses the transformer, to minimize the use of the standing seam roof, and to use a non-reflective surface with the recommendation to look at a paint finish for whatever standing seam roof area may be retained. A review of consistency between the heavily simulated divided lights and full light windows, potentially larger overhangs at the roofs. A review, I mean, I realize we got additional elaborations, but review circulation around the harbor master and fueling pumps. Review of whether it is indeed a bocce court of program or more friendly, and I understand cornhole was mentioned. Perimeter walkways to remain the crushed oyster shells. Fire pit locations on the terraces to be identified, and this will have to get checked with the fire marshal as far as their location. Just a comment was made on the review of the extent of Tabby. This is not a direction that says you have to go. It's just look at it, study it one more time. You can come back and tell us that you studied it and feel like it's everywhere where you have it is exactly where you want it. A reminder that as you continue to detail it, that this project does not need to be a match to the clubhouse, and perhaps wants to have a little bit closer connection to the Portofino look. The recommendation to minimize the variety of dormers, specifically on the west facade, that the two different size dormers ideally be the same size if they are both retained. The note that the back side of the outdoor bar surface that is facing the lower walkway be sufficiently screened, that all fabric canopies be shown on the drawings, that a separation between pedestrian and vehicular traffic at the vehicular drop-off be further identified with the recommendation of likely going to steel bollards, and the recommendation to review the service yard shape to create less of a pinch point and make it as friendly as possible. That concludes my recommendation for approval with conditions. If somebody would like me to make the modification to what the comment about the transparent handrail was, I would be happy to modify.
Mr. Karstens had that comment.
Yeah, it was a remark, and I was thinking about the cable rail above. I would say is that the modification to detail R1 on sheet L4.02, I would recommend a lower rail or a kick rail component be incorporated into that detail. Otherwise, I'm satisfied with that detail. I need a low rail, kick rail type component incorporated. It can still be that metal. It doesn't have to be wood.
I would like to modify my recommendation for approval with conditions with the one additional comment about the modification of the railing detail on L4.02 to include a lower kick rail element in the detail.
All right, thank you, Annette. I'd like to have one quick sidebar discussion on what exactly the Portofino comment is going to entail for the applicant. That came from Ms. Foss. Are you suggesting? What are you suggesting there, Kathy?
Well, I think what they suggested to us is that they went after the beach clubhouse, and this isn't a beach situation. It's sitting in the market at Harbor Town, and those buildings all have colors. And what I'm seeing in the quarter deck is that it's basically white. I mean, it's cream colored, and they did put some blue shutters on, but that's about it for the colors. And I think that colors should be incorporated where is possible.
Right, so that'll definitely be at least a point of discussion. All right, no further discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Karstens. Teresa, would you please call roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes?
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Genteman.
Yes, so motion passes unanimously. Look forward to seeing you all. Thank you, Isabella and David and Cliff, for joining us. And you may log off at your convenience or hang around for the rest of the show. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, so moving on to, I got this in the right order, new development final, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, DRB 000321-2021. Chris?
Okay, Gumtree Road circle, the circle at the end of Gumtree Road is in the bottom left of this slide, and Squire Pope heading towards the back gate of Hilton Head Plantation, which is up at the top right-hand corner of the screen, and the proposed site, or the site of the proposed development, is outlined in red. Immediately adjacent to it, where the cursor is a fire station. There's a restaurant over here, and that associated parking along with dry dock storage here. If anybody does not know where we are, please let me know right now. Okay, not hearing anybody. This is Mount Calvary Baptist Church. The applicant is seeking to construct a new church building next to the existing church building and expand the associated parking lot. The existing church building will be converted to the parish's fellowship hall. The new church building will be a pre-manufactured metal building with wood stud walls, finished in stucco and cement board lap siding to match the existing church. The roof will be constructed of metal standing seam roofing panels. The site will also serve as an overflow parking lot for the restaurants across the street during peak hours. The parking lot surface will be mostly constructed of pervious paving. Just some details initially. The light fixtures that are proposed for the building. And then elevations of the proposed building along with pictures of the existing church. A site plan for the parking. The landscape plan. Of particular interest, and I'll locate, are the specimen trees back here. There is an existing tree here. and some existing trees here that we'll talk about in a little bit. A floor plan for the proposed church. Roof plan. Elevations. Sections through the building and wall sections. Lighting plan for the church, and there were some back here there are exterior fixtures that we looked at early on. Lighting schedule. Parking lot lighting plan. It's important to note that the fixtures, the poles along the property line do have shields so that light level is falling off beyond the parking line, which is the requirement of the LMO. Staff recommends approval as submitted. Now, I would point out that this is the final. The conceptual was approved end of last year.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Staff recommends approval with the following conditions.
Yeah.
Excuse me. For the laurel oak, which is a 22, there's a 14-inch and a laurel oak that's 31 inches adjacent to Squire Pope Road. And for the laurel oak, which is 11, let me go back to that. It's the 11-inch laurel oak is in this area, and then there's a live oak 26/27, meaning it's a double trunked, and the specimen live oak here, which is 24/25, and then there's another trunk that's 25/19 and 15 at the back of the site that the tree protection area around those trees be enlarged to 15-foot minimum, and provide 4 inches of composted wood chip mulch within the tree protection fence. This is prior to construction to help prevent compaction of the roots under these trees. And third, specify on the tree removal and protection plan pre and post construction fertilization and mycore treatment. Again, because so many trees are being removed from this site, staff suggestion is that the trees that are to remain get treatment to guarantee their survival through construction. 2, shift catch basin number 8, which is this one, 2 parking stall widths away from the laurel oak there, to reduce disturbance close to that trunk. So either shifting it down here or shifting it back up to here. And 3, revise the grading plan to eliminate any disturbance within the tree protection fence around the specimen live oak, around this specimen live oak here. There seems to be indication that there's some grading going in that area. And my apologies, that now concludes staff's recommendations.
And Chris, your recommendations are all those that you could do at staff level review?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir, they are.
Thank you. All right, is the applicant present?
Yes.
Tim?
Yeah. Can you guys see me?
Yeah.
Hold on one second. The video's not on. All right.
There you go.
There you go. Tim Probst from Parker Design Group Architects.
You have anybody else with you today?
We should have David from Civil. David, are you there? I don't see him.
3.
There is a David on the call.
Okay.
That's me? Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right, great. David, could you
Thank you.
state your name and company, please, for the record?
My name is David Carlick. I'm with Carolina Engineering Consultants Incorporated. We're the site engineer for the project.
Thanks. All right, you guys got the floor for 10 minutes. You need to add anything to Chris's narrative?
I do not. David, do you have anything?
The only thing I wanted to point out was when Chris was talking about shifting catch basin number 8, the tree to be saved back there is actually an 8-inch pine tree. That 11-inch laurel oak is being removed. It's got a 15-inch pipe going right through it. But everything else, yeah, we've got no problem addressing.
Okay, Chris. Sorry,
if we need to move that catch basin to protect the pine tree, we can do that as well.
Okay, Chris, any follow up on your end on that? The new one?
No, I guess my confusion was I thought that pine tree was the laurel oak. So, I mean, if that's the case, I don't know that the catch basin needs to be moved for the 8-inch pine.
Thank you. So we'll take that one off your list here. It was number 2. Okay. Anything else, David, to add?
No, that was it. Great comments, and yeah, we've got no problem addressing them.
All right, so we'll go through the board here, and you guys hang with us, see if anybody has any questions for you. Mr. McAllister, you start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll say I think it looks good. Appreciate you working to address all the comments from the last submittal. If I recall correctly, there was a good bit of discussion last meeting about the service yard and HVAC location. When I look at the elevation, and I'll just go ahead and state my position. I'm good with what you're showing. I think it's not a big issue for me, and I think it's well landscaped, and it's going to be hitting. Overall landscaping comment, I think it's great. I think it's very well landscaped. It's going to be nice. Just had a couple comments. In the northern buffer, I know you technically aren't required to have a buffer, but I would request that specifically the southern red oaks be swapped out for an evergreen tree up there in the north side of the buffer. I think you've got like 4 right there in the middle, and then a couple on the right side. Just something evergreen, just to give us a little bit more screening, since we don't know what's going to happen. What might happen on the adjacent property in the future. Let's see. One thing I did notice, the landscape island in the parking lot to the, I guess that's the east of the building. There are 3 live oaks there in the middle. I'm just bringing it to your attention. They're smack dab right on your storm drain line. So I would recommend staggering them just to get them off the line so they establish better. Other than that, I think the building looks good, and that's all of my comments. And I also support staff's comments as well.
David. Mr. Karstens.
I'd only ask Chris if we feel like we've met that connection that we were trying to seek with the pedestrian way. I know we've gotten a stronger connection to kind of getting across the street and servicing those handicap spots. I wasn't sure if we were trying to get anywhere near that back area of parking with the pedestrian connection. Right now, folks are crossing over islands, and I know it's very tight. And if the parking counts are right on, it makes it really hard. But I wasn't sure if we could modify the ends of these islands in this central parking area that runs north-south, I don't know if we can modify the end of the one to maybe, I don't know, maybe we pull up one of those live oaks that David was just talking about, and that we might be able to get some sidewalk heading towards the back, just to help pick up people. But I'm wondering if staff felt comfortable enough with the sidewalk, considering that was part of the conceptual approval.
I guess staff's thought is that the people will end up walking down the drive aisles, and I don't know. I'm not sure that the sidewalk would be used, and it eliminates trees.
Understood. That was really, I was looking for things off of conceptual. I think Mr. McAllister hit on some things that I saw with some of the materials. So otherwise, that's all I have. Thank you.
Good. Ms. Lippert.
I think overall it's a nice project. I think it's a nicely dressed up, pre-engineered metal building. I just had, I think, I just had one detailed question on the first two side windows. Am I reading that correctly, that they just have a upper shutter on sort of the transom and the bottom is essentially a closed shutter with no windows at
That's
that
correct.
location?
They're in bathrooms, so we wanted natural light in there without having a window down below.
And I guess to me, just the upper shutters in the open position are a little bit of an odd detail. But we'll see how the rest of the board feels on that. I might just eliminate those upper shutters on the two side windows since the bottom is closed and just leave a transom above. That's my only comment. I think other than that, it's come together really nicely proportionally. The proportions really work well on the project.
Thank you, Annette. Ms. Remke.
Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I tend to agree with what Ms. Lippert just said. We don't see that detail of the open shutters anyplace else on any of those windows. So I think if we keep it on the bottom for the privacy and just have the transom on the top, I think that'll look fine. I think this is a good looking building. I think they've done a very good job on it. Just out of curiosity, kind of personal curiosity, on this site there are, as we know, a number of trees that have to be taken out. And some of the trees are currently tagged with two different colors of tagging material. Can anybody tell us what the two colors mean?
I cannot. I know typically the surveyor, marks the tree he surveyed with a ribbon, just to make sure they don't survey the same tree multiple times. But yeah, I'm not sure what the two different color ribbons represent.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're trees to be taken out or trees to be left. And then the second color is confusing, but it's fine if nobody knows the answer to that. I was just kind of curious. Otherwise, I think this is going to be a good project.
Thank you, Debbie. Mr. Molesky.
Thanks. I guess the one live oak, I guess looking at the site plan, it looks like there's, we'll call it a front parking area, that little middle area, and the back area. So in the back area there, the one live oak that Chris was talking about preserving, are we expanding that radius and taking away a couple parking spaces to protect it post-construction, or you're just making provisions pre and during construction?
I guess, is that a question addressed towards staff?
Yeah, I'm just unclear. I know Chris had made some comments about protecting that tree, and I didn't know if that meant that we would be increasing that radius and maybe losing a parking space to the left and right just to create a bigger buffer underneath the spread, or that's what we see there, and Chris is just making a note to make sure you guys protect the tree during construction.
Staff's concern was not so much the proposed parking, but there was an indication, a grading line that ran through the 25-foot distance out from the trunk of that specimen tree, this grading line right here. And that is very detrimental to the tree, to the health of the roots. So staff's comment is to protect the root and protect that area under the tree during construction. It's not requesting removal or elimination of a parking spot.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll echo the same comments that that Jed made with the sidewalk, but again, good point there, Chris, with my comment to sacrifice of losing trees. Back to the site plan with the front parking and then the middle parking area, and it looks like there's right where you transition from the middle parking to the back parking, it looks like that peninsula sticking out there pretty far with the proposed live oak. Is that just something visually that looks like that sticks out further than it should, or is that something that could impede the vehicular flow, or whatever the fancy word is for that?
David, you got that?
John, who are you asking that question to?
I mean, I guess the question is probably, I don't know if it goes to the civil that I'm assuming laid out the parking plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can answer that. The town requires a 15-foot wide landscape island at the end of a row of parking, and the width of that island is 15 feet.
Okay, so that's to abide by that. Now, that doesn't look like that infringes upon the fact if we have, again, not that this is a 278 or I-95, but 2 lanes of traffic going back and forth there, there's enough room and people backing out and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that just creates a tight area. It just looks that way to me, looking at the site plan.
Yes, sir. We'll double check it just to make sure we've got adequate drive aisles and enough room for people to back up. And if we need to change that island some, we can eliminate a parking place and make that happen if we need more room in there.
Okay, thanks. And is there a pretty picture shown where you guys landed with the fencing to separate if that's a trailer park adjacent to the parking area?
No, sir. I'm not aware of any fencing. I hadn't reviewed the landscape plans, so if there is any fencing shown, it would be on that, but I think they're just going to do it with vegetation.
Because I'm trying to jog my memory. Wasn't there like a gate or something so the people that live in the trailer park could pass through? And we were talking about whether either there wasn't a gate, we needed to add one, or there was one and we were going to remove it. Or does anybody remember anything about that?
The only thing I remember is we had playground fencing that was going to be removed with the playground. I don't remember discussions beyond that on just fencing around there.
Okay, so there's no chain link fence or anything now that separates the trailer park from the parking lot.
We did not. It was not part of their previous requirement.
Something like that. Okay. Okay. Other than that, everything looks good. And if we're taking votes on the comment that Ms. Lippert made with the transom with the shutters, I would vote to remove the upper shutters. Just this way, the proportion kind of feels vertical like the other windows. But that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was not here for the first conceptual review, so I don't have anything to bring today and what I see. I agree with staff comments. As far as those shutters go on the left side, is it left side? Yeah, left side elevation. They kind of tie in the front elevation, so that shows an entrance, the walk-in entrance versus the drop-off entrance, and I kind of like it. It kind of works in an artsy way, and it's defining an entrance. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Ms. Voss? Yeah, I was going to bring that one up. Because if you look on the front, as Kathy pointed out, there you have the double shutter, and the ones on this side just happen to be closed. And then that window is separated from all those other windows on the left side by the porte cochere. So does that change your viewpoint at all, Annette and Debbie? Or Debbie, either?
Can you remind me
No,
of the colors
I'm fine.
of the shutter relative to the body color?
What is the shutter color? Can you go to
Relative.
it's a darker color. Can you go to the color board, Chris?
I can actually pull it up on my phone. I photographed it yesterday.
It would be a darker brown.
And then the facade is a cream,
Right.
range of the creams.
I think it's the first sheet.
Let's see here. Shutter is the Turkish coffee, which I believe is the.
Yeah, you can see it's a dark brown. It's a bronze color.
It doesn't change my opinion, but that doesn't mean that I won't lean towards the majority or just, have the one dissenting vote. Let's say it that way. Just because to me, while I understand that it is the continuation of the outside, I'm just seeing it's going to read like a T on the side of the facade because of the contrasting color. If it was a slight shade gradation, I think I would be more open, but it is a dark brown against a cream, and therefore will not have them read as a vertical, but instead will have them read as a T, and that's why I guess my comment came from.
Good point. Kathy, back at you one last time.
I'm still good with it being the closed and open shutter part on that.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, we're not gonna hold you guys up over a shutter. Tim, you're the architect. What do you think?
Well, let me add this. They are functional shutters, meaning they're on hardware too. So they're not just applied shutters.
They could close them if they wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they need, we'd like to have the natural light in the bathroom. So those windows are pretty important to us being there in the transom, just to get some natural light. And then the shutters, like I said, they're functional shutters, so you could possibly close them if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If they were just applied, I would agree with that. I mean, it is a detail we've used quite a bit on residential construction. I wouldn't say it's, abnormal.
Well, let's just say during church when people are in there, somebody will reach up there and open them, and they'll only be open for 90 minutes, and then once Bible study's done, they'll close them. So, I don't want to be a stickler over that. I think the argument that they are operable and they can close them, Annette could jump up there and close them if it bothers her. So it looks like really we just have landscape comments parking lot or landscape comments. So unless there's anything else beyond that, anybody second round? All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. McAllister, motion.
Move to approve the Mount Calvary Baptist Church DRB 000329-2020 with the following conditions. They replace the southern red oaks and the northern buffer with an evergreen tree, and the landscape island in the parking lot to the east of the new building. Reevaluate the tree location as it relates to the storm drain. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything else?
Can you add staff's comments?
Yeah. And I'd like to amend my motion to include staff's comments with the motion.
Number two, though, we decided we didn't need.
That's
staff
right.
decided that that one could be struck.
That's right.
So just for fun, would you just read those 1A, 1B, 1C, and 3?
Sure. Let me pull them up real quick.
Oh, if you don't have it, sorry.
No, I do. I've got a little iPad here, and sometimes it's slow
Okay.
to load. Okay. There we go. I'd like to amend my motion to include staff comments for the 22-inch Laurel Oak, OCH 14, LAO 31 adjacent to Squire Pope Road, and the LOA 11 and Live Oak 26 and 17-inch, and Specimen Live Oak 24, 25, 25, 19, 15 at the back of the site. Enlarge the tree protection to 15-foot minimum where possible. Provide 4-inch of composted wood chip mulch within the tree protection fence. Specify on the tree removal and protection plan pre and post construction fertilization with a mycor treatment. And revise the grading plan to eliminate any disturbance within the tree protection fence around the Specimen Live Oak 24, 25, 25, 19, 15.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Mr. McAllister. Any discussion? Does anyone have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Foss. Teresa, would you read roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes. So passes unanimously. Thanks, Tim and David.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to Alteration Edition, Charlie's Outdoor Dining, DRB 000330-2021. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your slide, diagonally at the top of the top left of your screen is William Hilton Parkway. New Orleans is running diagonally on the bottom right. The site is outlined in red in the middle of your screen. Riley's is to the left, to the right-hand side of the site, and Nunzio's restaurant, which you might remember earlier, is down at the bottom left-hand side. Let me know if anybody does not know where we are. Okay, not hearing anybody. This project will provide an outdoor pavilion on the front patio of Charlie's Restaurant. The concrete patio will be replaced with a new 450 square foot outdoor wood-framed pavilion with a metal roof that is designed to match the existing restaurant design without detracting from it. The pavilion will include new fan-mounted lighting and natural gas heaters. A small side stair will be added to the front porch for food service, and a gutter will be added to the existing roof to divert rainwater in this area. So just to get a feel for some of the architecture in the area, this is across the street from the site, adjacent to the site, and this is the proposed site plan. You can see the outline of the proposed pavilion here with the existing, in light gray, the existing patio. So the patio will be expanded, and the planted areas shown, indicated. Here's the stair that they noted. A roof plan showing the proposed pavilion here. This is the proposed landscape plan and elevations. section through the column and the screen on the left-hand side. Sort of a isometric. Cut sheets for the heaters, the fans, and staff is recommending approval as submitted.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have applicant present?
You guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. This is Steve Stowers with Architecture 101.
Welcome back, Steve.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. The only thing I would add to Chris's description is I just wanted to mention that we really think the building is very attractive as it currently stands, and we did study about 5 or 6 different options here to try to minimize the visual impact of the pavilion on the entrance and to not detract from the building in any way. So we actually think that the architecture is derived from a little arbor that's existing in front of it that currently marks the entrance. And so we've taken some of the architecture that was found in that arbor and just reorganized it to suit the pavilion. So the pavilion, the arbor will be rebuilt in its current configuration, and then we'll build the pavilion using the same basic architectural elements.
Thanks. I'm going to get hit up with this question while I have you. How are you going to, what are you going to do with the conduit and electrical outlets and things like that?
That's a wonderful question. So the owner was going to repave that patio anyway because the patio is deteriorating. So as part of that, we're going to run all the new conduits and power and the propane source underground.
Okay, so when it comes up and you have to get to the heaters,
it will be within the column wrap.
It'll be in the column. Okay.
Yep.
All right. All righty.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
appreciate that. I appreciate that comment, and I would request that be noted on the plans.
Yes, and that'll be a condition to do that. So yes, we will, because we've become sticklers on that. So they stay right there. Steve, could you just run us through it? It's going to go up through the column, and then they'll have to go through the beam at some point, like that middle layer of the beam. Oh, you're muted, Steve. Steve, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I said they're gonna mount to that beam, so we may end up having to fur that down just ever so slightly to get that conduit in there.
Okay, so it'll come up through the column, and then where will it come out of the beam? It'll come all the way up to the rafter?
Well, you can see the large triple 2x12 that's on there.
Yeah.
So it'll be, we could fur out the bottom of that.
Okay.
There's a piece of trim there anyway.
All right. And then it goes up to the rafter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And then hold tight to the rafter. Okay.
Well, and let's be clear, let's just to be perfectly clear, the conduit for there's a difference between the conduit and for the ceiling fan.
Yeah.
And the conduit for the conduit for the natural gas piping, because the natural gas piping is mounted on that triple 2x12 beam, whereas the ceiling fan is centered underneath that. So we would run the conduit for the ceiling fan on top of the rafter joist.
On top of that, right where the hand is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If anybody has any other questions, we'll let you know. So hang with us, Mr. McAllister.
I think you've done a great job matching the existing architectural detailing on it. I think it looks nice. No comment.
Landscape look good to you?
I thought so, yeah, unless Judd caught something that I didn't. I mean, all those plants are common plants we see on the island. I would note the Confederate jasmine planted on the left side. That's going to create a green wall. That's going to grow up that lattice. But I'm good with it. But
Okay.
I'm curious to see what everybody else has to say.
Sounds great. Thank you. David, Mr. Karstens.
I'm guessing that in the one axon, it showed there was a fan on the entry porch of the existing restaurant. I'm hoping that will end up matching what's in this feature, or they'll be in the same family. I didn't get it. I was there picking up food a couple weeks ago, and I forgot to recognize what that looked like. But my hope is that if they're taken within the same can, that those fans and light fixtures would be in the same family along with the ones proposed. So if you go to one more, it's near the end of the set, was right there. You can see that fan fixture there. If that truly is an existing fan fixture, if they don't match, I'd like for them to be in the same family at least.
You know if they match, Steve?
They do not, but I think the one that's on the porch is old and probably needs to be replaced, so we could very easily replace them with the new ceiling fans.
Okay, thanks, Steve. All right, go ahead, Judd. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I was a little confused by the shape. I'm not going to lie, of just the overall, in essence, the two kind of garden pavilions put together. And obviously, you said you studied a bunch of them as far as even looking at. I'm sure you looked at, the 26 by 16 shape as a rectangle with a matching gable on the end. Obviously, you and the family agreed on the functionality. You all have a good layout with the tables and such, and that's still going to be an entry courtyard. So I'm not necessarily going to needle in on that. It just at first it was very confusing with the roof lines and such, and I was just wondering about a simpler shape. And I'm sure it'll probably come up with somebody else on that. And finally, I would see more than 18 inches for that Confederate jasmine on the one side. If you go back to the planting plan, knowing that the parking is right there and we're right up on the sidewalk, even that front side with that 4-foot planting area, these days you feel like you're right on top of that arbor. I'm a little hesitant as far as the 18 inches. But the only thing I'd grow it to is 3 feet. So what's another 18 inches? It's either that or do you all have wheel stops? You should have wheel stops there, right? Yeah, you do have wheel stops there. It ends up, no matter what, even with the wheel stops, I can see in street view, it ends up becoming a very tight area for those few spaces where that structure is so close. So if possible, I'd like to see, at least a 3-foot bed there. It would then match similar to the one that you have out in the front side of that structure, and it would allow you to put in a dwarf podocarpus to complement, that jasmine growing up, and just to give you a little more foundation to that end of that structure. So then just give some more room on that sidewalk because of those wheel stops being right up against the sidewalk there.
Let me see what I want to say here. So you're talking, Judd, right there below the cut arrow where it says 1'6"? Is that where you are?
Yeah. So those 3 spaces that in the parking lot, if when you're out there, those wheel stops are right up against the back of curb.
Yeah.
So if somebody parks it, they're impeding on that 3 or 4 foot sidewalk, no matter what, really, knowing that that parking lot in general is pretty tight. I think the structure and that sidewalk, its functionality, and just the breathing room off of that structure would do better with at least 3 feet there. I don't know. I don't know if you necessarily have 1.5 foot to shift this entire structure, to the right, or if you can just pick up, that little bit of a shift in that front section. But it's really tight on that one side, knowing that you have a more generous, frontage on the side that faces New Orleans.
All right. I'm sorry, was that your last one, Judd?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Lippert.
I struggled with this one a little bit because I, of course, totally understand everybody wants to have outdoor seating and wants to have covered outdoor seating. And it's not so much that it was the roof lines that was what I'm struggling with, but the very different fields, depending on if I'm 3 feet over or 4 feet here this way. One wall, the wall facing the parking has, a tall wall of a consistent height. A sort of secondary entry into that area has it coming down low. And then as soon as I'm past both of those points, we can see it pretty clearly on the furniture plan. Now I'm partially under roof and partially in a totally open, well, maybe I'm completely in an open. I have one table that's completely open. And I think that's just my struggle is that there are so many different fields to that structure, depending on if I've shifted 3 feet over. What made me feel a little bit more comfortable is the jasmine turning that wall towards the parking into a green wall, but the jasmine is only going to be green for part of the year, and we have jasmines at our office. So right now it's just, I guess I would have just preferred a little bit more consistency in the detailing of where the screen is and how it terminates. I think that's sort of my feel, and I'm curious to see what the rest of the board has to say to that.
Yep. And Ms. Rimke.
I think what Annette was just alluring to was kind of the differences on that front face there, where we've got full height on at least one side of the pavilion, and then they kind of drop down and there's kind of a little gated area. And then when we go over to the arbor, it's a little bit different too. But truly, that doesn't really bother me that much. I think it's fine. I kind of like the idea that they looked at the arbor area and kind of used some of the elements to replicate the new outside dining area and use the lattice. I think that kind of ties things together. I like the way it looks. I may have not been paying attention if this was said, but I'm assuming it's all standing seam roof that's the same color. Just maybe somebody can affirm that for me.
The roof would match.
It does match.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Other than that, I'm fine with this. I think it looks good.
Okay, thank you. Debbie? Mr. Molesky.
Yes, I guess on one of the, it might have been plan view, whatever I saw, there was a 6-inch gutter that looks like it's going on the existing structure. Are there gutters planned for the addition?
We had not planned on any gutters on the addition. Right now, the building doesn't have any gutters at all. But what our goal was with that one singular gutter is the existing roof shape funnels an awful lot of rain into that one corner. Mm-hmm. And that's where the servers are principally going to be walking back and forth. So we had intended just to get as much of that rain out as possible and just leave that one little triangle of dripping would still probably come through, but I didn't want to line the whole thing with gutters, to be honest with you. It seemed dissimilar, and the new gutter is going to be somewhat behind the roof structure anyway.
All right, because I think the one picture that shows the seating chart, and maybe this is kind of also what Annette had mentioned, that it looks like with the new proposed roof structure where the valley is and everything, that it's going to be dumping a lot of water on that six-seater there, six table, six top. And again, I know when it's raining, no one's going to be sitting there, but either way, at the end of the day, there's going to be that valley and that roof there that's just going to be, channeling all that water right to that table. And, again, for what that's worth. And then if you do decide to add gutters later, we obviously want to make sure that it'd be something that's appropriate, as I'm sure you and the owner would as well. The only thing that I would say is, I know you mentioned you try to make everything kind of be congruent with the existing structure. The existing structure I see all gabled ends, and then here everything's all hip. And it seems like these roof overhangs on this addition seem to be minimal. Maybe the site constraints had something to do with that, or maybe it's something I'm unaware of, but I would just think that you would want to try to maximize those overhangs just to provide greater protection for people that are seating in there. I don't know what was the whole thought process on that.
It's a great comment. Really appreciate it. I apologize. I got a plane flying overhead if you're picking that up. But the driver on the hip is simply just, we didn't want it to be visually, the right term would be obtrusive, but the gable was too prominent for that visual. What we were trying to do, we were trying to make this secondary to the principal architecture. And the hip worked to that benefit. In terms of maximizing the overhang versus the columns, we were just trying to maximize the amount of free area inside the actual principal footprint of the structure. If you pull the columns in, obviously that pulls the tables in, and you have less area that's actually functional.
So it's the setback is the constraint that won't allow you to extend those.
We could certainly make them.
Anymore?
Yeah, we could certainly make them bigger, but it makes the roof feel bigger. And we're going for we studied it very carefully in terms of, does bigger, how big does this thing need to be before it starts to overpower the main building? And that was our main goal.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that you put that thought into it. Thank you for sharing. That's all.
Thanks, John. Ms. Foss.
I think the project looks great. I appreciate the fact that the entrance to the existing building comes off on an angle, so then you offset the second one and didn't just do an L off the whole building and create a tunnel getting in there. I think you added some activity to the front and also gave your outdoor seating areas. I also I appreciate a lot of low country buildings, the older ones, have been added onto, so we have to allow for additions, and I think you did a great job of adding on. These obviously sit in front of the building, but I don't think it takes away, and I don't have any issue with it. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I'm most in agreement with Ms. Foss. I think you did a nice job nestling it in there so that it is secondary. Mr. Molesky made a good point about that one valley that's going to be dumping water on that tabletop. Do with that what you will, but you might want to consider putting gutters in there. My only real comment is if you could go to an elevation A704. My only real comment is I think they should be a little taller, actually. I think they work great from scale when you're at parking lot level, but when you're in those windows, seated at those windows, behind elevation 1, you're seeing the top of the roof from what would appear to be a normal height person would be looking onto the roof. And if it could be, even if the bottom of that eave or the top of the column could even start at that last mutton, that horizontal mutton right where the hand is, looks like it might be about a foot higher, then you're not staring into the edge. You're not staring into the end of the roof. At that point, you would hopefully see the band board and not the roof. So I think it should be like a foot taller. Same thing coming down the porch. Charlie's has, I think, for as Ms. Foss pointed out, this is kind of low country architecture. It's been added on over the years. Got some quirky things going. It's got a really nice courtyard. I think the entries into Charlie's is quite quaint, and I think you've maintained that with the arbor and everything. I just really want to push those up like a foot, or at least taller than the service fence screening on the left there. If that's it just needs to kind of sit on that. To me, it kind of needs to sit on top of that horizontally, and then I'm good with everything else. I think you did a nice job, Steve, fitting it in with what you had available, and you kept the little courtyard entrance. So if you could just make it a little taller, I'm totally on board. Kathy.
Michael, I think you just made a really good comment and noticed that. I didn't see that. My question to the David, when you bring up that roof, do the elements have a higher chance of getting in there without the overhangs and the gutters that you have?
Well, the overhangs, and another reason not to do deep overhangs, which John had brought up, is that will now push that roof even closer to the ground. And if we raise it a foot and make those overhangs 2 feet, then you've kind of negated sorry about my dogs. You've kind of negated everything we've done by raising it. So I think the abbreviated if it's a torrential downpour, then nobody's probably going to be out there anyway. If it's a light rain, you're good. And if you were to gutter it, Steve, that might even give you that extra 6 inches of overhang, and maybe get rid of some of that splashing water that might be coming down. But I'll leave the gutters up to how you guys want the restaurant to function. But I definitely think it should be raised. Steve, do you want to? I can't see you, but do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know is my video not showing, guys?
Well, I can't see everybody at once. There we go.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I agree. I think it could be a foot taller, and it wouldn't change the visual. I don't think we would go much taller than a foot, because I think it'll start to overpower everything. If it needs to be a foot taller, I agree. I think that could really add something to it, and certainly help for the restaurateurs, the diners who are sitting at those windows right there in the front windows. That would certainly help. To Judd's point, instead of 3 feet, could we maybe say 2 feet on the sidewalk setback? Because we had staff and I had an awful lot of conversations about that 18 inches, and what we agreed to was that because of the unique sort of orientation of the double square, we went 4 feet on the front, and then we also stepped it back in the back. And in our discussion was mostly around how close could that front be. And staff's original recommendation was absolutely 3 feet. But the other thing is we didn't want to slide it over to the point where we were really starting to crowd that entrance. So we just that's sort of how we arrived at that number.
Yeah, and Steve, it's funny, if they were going to redo the sidewalk on that side, I'd actually say make the sidewalk bigger and you could get away with a lesser planting area. The only thing I've just noticed is that those wheel stops, you don't get all of that sidewalk. And so it's just going to be, especially through those three spaces, it's going to be really tight. Now, hopefully, some of the circulation ends up coming across. Maybe I guess you can't really come in through underneath the structure to the main door. You're still kind of coming around. Whatever space you can give that, knowing that we're not going to expand that sidewalk, and still keeping that jasmine then, because inevitably somebody's going to have to kind of step, along that edge, or people are just going to be walking single file. I could keep it the same. It's just in my brain, I know it's going to get really tight whenever they're busy. And they just have to be comfortable with that, because then, between vehicle, sidewalk, structure, and then people dining, there's a lot going on in a tight space. And if that's part of the charm and part of the quirk of this entry courtyard, then that's part of it. So if they're comfortable in understanding that the functionality of that sidewalk gets greatly reduced because you don't have that much room to go to because of a structure, then we can keep it at the 18 inches and just keep the jasmine in there, because there still will, like to Dave McAllister's point, there's going to be an area for people to step into, within that 18 inches, because the jasmine's growing up, not necessarily filling out the ground plane. So just I guess let's circle back and ignore my comment about pushing the structure back, and as long as the family's aware of just how tight that's going to end up being compared to what it is now, I think it's all good.
So if at peak somebody's parked there and you have to kind of scooch past the car, it's just,
yeah, I know.
it's part of the charm, as you said, right? So.
Yeah, I know I've been out there enough times. Like I said, right now it's open, and while we were talking about this, I pull up Street View and I see a pickup truck parked along that edge, and it's overhanging at least a foot to maybe 15 inches of that sidewalk. So like I said, you're going to end up coming down to where you're walking single file, which, for a 4-foot sidewalk, you typically aren't necessarily side by side anyhow. It's just a product of the wheel stop location, the sidewalk width, and then the structure. So.
All right. Is anyone? What do you think about raising it a foot? Anybody against that? Think it's a good idea? Kind of get it up out of the windows? Annette?
I think it's a good idea. I think it definitely would just need to be a staff and you approval just to double check the proportions, because right now I think the proportions work really well of roof to, I'm definitely not a proponent of bigger overhangs, because I agree, Steve has studied that well, that right now the roof mass is not overpowering to the existing structure. I realize that raising has nothing to do with the overhangs. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. I would definitely not increase the overhangs, raise it, and you just have to check what happens to the columns so that they don't start feeling too skinny. They may have to go up one size to then still feel in proportion. That's my only concern with raising it, but for the diners inside, I think it's a good idea, and whether it's 10 inches or 12 inches, I think is a little bit of a proportional study.
Yeah, I have full confidence that Steve will line it up correctly. It's just, in that, looking at that elevation we were looking at, if it lined up with, let's give them a benchmark so we don't have to play a guessing game. If the top of the beam were to visually line up with the right in there, almost like taking the top of the column and putting it where the band board is right now, the fascia board, so that just so we can get it. It looks like it might be a foot or so, and I think that'll still work. Or line it up with where you have visually with that fence on the left. And I think that'll work. I'd be happy to look at it, but if it's somewhere, assuming that beam is 12 inches deep, because they're 2x12s. I just think we're just moving that up 12 inches. And I think that'll make a lot of difference. Yeah. All right. We don't need to beat that to death. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Anyone with any? Steve, Chris, anybody? Any last comments? All right, good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion then, since it's a short list. I'm good at the short list. And that's good at the really long ones. But regarding Charlie's Outdoor Diner DRB-0000330-2021, approval with the following conditions. Raise the roof approximately 12 inches to get it up out of the windows, adjacent windows to the interior. All electrical conduit and gas piping is going to be hidden in the columns and may exit the columns up at the beam and the rafters, and then should be held tight to said beams and rafters. The existing fan on the existing porch should match the new fans. And I think that was it. Did I miss anything? All right. Teresa, would you please call roll?
I'll second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chairman. We have a second from Ms. Foss. Sorry, I got out of sync. I was doing so much talking. Now, Teresa, would you call roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes. All right, Steve, looks you have unanimous
very
approval.
much.
Thanks. All right, so now we move on to board business for review and approval of the letter that I've been working on for about 3 months to Town Council regarding building height limits, setback standards, and buffer requirements. All right, and I can either bore you all and read it, or you can just imagine me reading it in your head. Has everyone had a chance to read it, first of all?
Yes.
Okay. We don't need to read it live, do we, Chris, for jurisprudence?
Teresa, what do you think? I don't think
No.
we do.
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, all right. So basically, the content of the letter is to address scale and the DRB's ability to deny or accept based on what we think is mass and scale, which we really don't have any teeth when it comes to that. And I also put in there, which, let me get to that. I also put in there what I call the Dale Strecker Memorial interior buffer. And I had put it that there would be a yet to be determined small, medium, and large projects, whatever those would be, and then have a minimum of 3 foot, 4 foot, and 5 foot planted buffer, which in a case where we cannot break down the mass of a building due to our inherent limited abilities to do so, we would at least have a buffer that we could, soften the edges at human scale. The other part of that, let me see, I'd say several of you probably Judd and Lynette were not on the board for a couple of these anyway. I know you were here from Mitchellville, but Wimbledon Court, there's probably only a few of us that were on here for Wimbledon Court. It was a massive multi-building group of buildings, for lack of a better term, and everyone on the board thought it was too tall. It was 4 stories on parking. A couple of the buildings were 1 story less. They were all very close together. But when it came down to it, the board could not deny it based on massing and scale. So everyone's had a chance to read this. Is there anything you would like, because this is a board letter, this is a draft, anything you would like to change, any syntax, any additional items? Yes, Jed.
In regards to that foundation buffer, the county requires 8 foot on all their projects, depending on the transect or conventional zone. I think about some of the Mitchellville project, and we probably needed more than 5 feet. If you're trying to get in a evergreen understory tree that's trying to reduce some of that first floor, I don't know what the best answer or suggestion would be, but it might have to be in larger projects. It might have to try to push that 10 foot. And obviously it's just a situation where they're trying to put a hardscape or a sidewalk is between the building and any kind of buffer. We understand buffers are satisfying the exterior boundaries. We're trying to, like you said, take care of that interior. So with those buildings that end up reaching that 70 foot, 60 foot height, I think we have to look at we have to look in that 8 to 10 foot range for those, for those types of buildings.
Okay. Yeah, that's a definitely good comment. So if we had 3, 4, and 5, we might be more like, 4, 6, and 10, or is the 3, can we do anything? I mean, we just had a discussion about 18 inches worth of jasmine. Does the and you were asking for 3 feet, and I would consider Charlie's probably on the small, maybe a medium project. Is 3 at a minimum? You can do something in there, right? Landscape.
Oh yeah, 3. I mean, yeah. I mean, 3 gives you at least a low hedge. It gets you, it gets you shrubs. It doesn't get you just ground cover or vine. I mean, obviously, once you get tighter, at least with Charlie's, they were looking at the jasmine, which creates more of a vertical green eventually. But yeah, I think 3, and I'll let David chime in too. 3 definitely is probably the lowest end, and I'd like to think that anybody can get 36 inches in on most projects, especially small projects. And it was just obviously this thing is precipitated on those really big ones, and that's the thing that I kind of gravitated to with that particular line. So, David.
What about if we get more specific and say it's a 3 feet starter, and then for a 1-story building, you got a 1-story building, it's 3 feet. If you've got 2 stories, you add, for every story you go up, you add 2 feet. So a 2-story building would be 5, 3-story 7, 4-story, we're now in your 8 to 10 range with 9. So we base it on, since we're trying to get down building mass, maybe we base it more on building mass than I just kind of threw in the generic small, medium, large. So maybe we get more specific with, since we can do something in 3 with a 1-story building like Charlie's, if Charlie's were a 2-story building, would 5 work? And if it were a 3-story building, now I'm going to be testing my math skills here, 7, and then 9, and with a maximum of 12, for a 5-story building. Is that, what everybody think about that? Anybody? Kathy?
How does, so if we have a massive building, but they do a one-story sort of entrance all the way, like a porch, I'm gonna call it, all the way around and then do 6 feet up, does that say we do 3 feet to
Well,
buffer
that
that?
helps
Pardon?
us.
Or-
That
Yeah.
helps us because then our setback, it kind of helps. Well, that's a good point. Maybe it's an aggregate of, if, yeah, I could see somebody, some sneaky landscape architect like Judd or David coming in and saying, hey, it's a one-story building that we're planning against, so I'm only doing 3 feet. Very good point. Yes. I
But
think
that would have
should be
helped
kept.
us on Mitchellville.
Yeah.
It would have helped, yeah.
That would
On
be a good thing.
Mitchellville, they took the interior courtyard, and again, as a building, I think it was nice. The concern was because it maxed out its square footage by pushing it out all the way. That's why, for the public eye, it felt like a ginormous building on the site. So if it did have the one story, it would have created that massing breakdown, and then I think it doesn't need as much of a landscape planting foundation buffer. So I would be okay with still doing that gradated sort of width to it.
And if you remember on Mitchellville, they had the fire lane on one side, but the other side, there was no drive aisle or parking lot. So all you had was to protect that side was the buffer, whatever the buffer requirements were. But on the front of the building, we could have applied it. And on that drive aisle side with the fire lane, we could have applied that had this been some rule in effect. So, yeah, I think it's a good direction to go.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a suggestion, excuse me, you might want to consider putting out the idea of this mandatory interior buffer and letting staff come up with some proposed numbers to be added into the LMO.
Yeah.
That way you're not having to deal with the specifics of it, and it's just getting the idea out there that the LMO needs to be changed to accommodate a landscaped area in this up against the building.
Okay, but should we change the syntax in the letter to reflect it? Instead of saying small, medium, large, we go with single story, multiple story, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think if
That
I'm
is
hearing,
that is certainly up to you. I guess my point is, I just don't think for this discussion, I don't think we need to get hung up on the specifics.
Yeah, we're not, and plus all the math's hurt in my head, so I think we just need to, we're the big idea people, so
Exactly.
All right, but
one thought I had was, do we want to let town council know so that they don't have to dig out the DRB things, and just as one sub-bullet say, like on Mitchellville, it became looking more massive because it was pushed out to the setbacks and had a courtyard. And in that sort of one sentence explanation on the 3 projects, explain what about the project pushed it to meet the setbacks, but not, maybe it's getting too detailed, but I just thought maybe it saves them time of digging out what was the project, trying to understand what we didn't like about it, or something like that.
I was just trying to avoid writing I had this all on one page, and then Teresa made the type bigger and spaced it correctly for me, and then it turned into a page and a half. Whereas I was like, yeah, if I just take these couple words out, I can fit this all in one page. But yeah, we could expand on it a little bit. But I think I've kind of taken Chris's cues that we just kind of put it out there that we think there's I don't call it a problem, but there may be an issue that we could do something about with further review. So but I can add a little more detail if needed.
I might add, Michael, in the 3 months that you took to write this letter, you did a pretty good job.
Thank you for throwing in there that it took me 3 months to write it. Yeah, it's one of those, okay, I'm going to sit down and write it tonight. Tonight I write it. Tonight. And I finally did it, so. All right. Anybody else, any thoughts? So, Chris, this would get one more draft, or?
However you all want to, if you all want to make changes to it, we can make those changes and run it back through at the next meeting so that you can have one last look at it. Yes, that works.
Okay. Right. So I know between now and next meeting, I can make those couple changes. So I'm going to kind of change the verbiage a little bit to reflect that the interior setback should be based on height and mass. And I might throw in a sentence under each of the 3 buildings, what was the trigger. So.
Again, the only suggestion would just be to leave the details to Planning Commission and the LMO committee.
We will do that. All right.
But thank you for writing
we don't
it.
need to do any kind of formal vote or anything, do we?
I don't think so because it's coming back through, right?
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
The only thing I would like to note is that and staff will take care of this for you, but we need to CC Mark Orlando, the new town manager, and I think with Mark coming on board, the title block is also out of date.
Hey, Teresa, can I fix it and then send it to you to fix?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So I'll add some words and then you can make it look like a third grader didn't write it. So. All right. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. I lost my sheet here. Staff report.
Real quick, we have one minor DRB approval since our last meeting. It was at 112 Arrow Road, and it essentially just slightly enlarged the deck there. That was the only minor DRB approval.
All right. All right, exactly 2 hours. We did pretty well today. So with no other business before the board, meeting is adjourned. See y'all.
That's right.